والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We're still in the second verse in Surah At-Talaq, Surah At-Talaq, Surah number 65, the second verse. We didn't finish going through the tafsir of the second verse, and we'll start with the recitation, inshallah, of the second and the third verses. We recited them before, but just to repeat them again, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. We'll go from the beginning, but just one time without going through the أحكام إن شاء الله. يا أيها النبي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها النبي إذا طلقتم النساء فطلقوهن لعدتهن لعدتهن وأحصوا العدة واتقوا الله ربكم لا تخرجوهن من بيوتهن ولا يخرجن إلا أن يأتين بفاحشة مبينة وتلك حدود الله ومن يتعد حدود الله فقد ظلم نفسه لا تدري لعل الله يحدث بعد ذلك أمرا فإذا بلغن أجلهن فأمسكوهن بمعروف أو فارقوهن بمعروف وأشهدوا ذوي عدل منكم وأقيموا الشهادة لله ذلكم يوعظ به من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. Still in the second ayah, the last part of the tafsir, as we heard the ahkam, the rulings of At-Talaq and the Iddah, the waiting period, and the ruling that is related to this, and how the Quran gives the admonition to the hearts with the ahkam. So the ahkam are not just some physical actions and that's it, but rather it comes as a result of the fear of Allah, being dutiful to Allah. There are limits to be observed, and a person can wrong himself or enter the hellfire wal billah because of not observing these commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and never to think good about oneself, that a person knows what is best for himself, but rather to submit oneself to the commands of Allah. So for those who they act not according to the commands of Allah when it comes to divorce, or their emotions are high and they think they know best for themselves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تدري لعل الله يحدث بعد ذلك أمرا. You don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might do and introduce after the matter, and that's why the wisdom behind these rulings is something that is beyond even our understanding, and that therefore people need to submit themselves to the commands of Allah, and one of which is not to expel or to allow like expelling the wife from her home. She does not leave without his permission after the divorce, after the first and the second one, with the details of that. And then the second ayah. So if they're close to reaching their ajal, the end of their iddah period, then either to keep them with ma'roof or to depart with ma'roof. And the ma'roof is repeated twice, so that in each case, the ma'roof, the goodness, and what is known to be good is to be established, and to bring witnesses to make sure that you have witnesses to ذَوَيْ عَادِلٍ مِّنْكُمْ, from those who among you are righteous and upright, وَأَقِيمُوا الشَّهَادَةَ لِلَّهِ, and to establish the shahada for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means you do it exactly the same way it's supposed to be, without recognizing or giving attention because of a relative or a friend or something. This is to the shuhada, this is to the witnesses, to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the end of where we stopped, and then after that he says, referring to the last part of the ayah, which is ذَلِكُمْ يُوعَظُ بِهِ مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. This is the admonition from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who believe in Allah and the last day, and we talked about that. Because those who put forward the hereafter before this worldly life, they would apply and act upon the righteous good deeds in the right way. And once there is weakness in al-iman, then all kinds of evil actions comes as a result of that. And then وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah, whoever has the taqwa of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways out for that person. And as he mentioned, since at-talaq can bring this deek or this tightness or sadness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the believers to have the taqwa of Allah, whether it's in the subject of at-talaq or any time, in any situation, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the taqwa of Allah will find ways, will make ways out for the person when it's tight, when he doesn't think of any way out. With the taqwa of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways for the believers. So then he says, فَإِذَا أَرَادَ الْعَبْدُ الطَّلَقَ. Hopefully you're following where we stop. فَإِذَا أَرَادَ الْعَبْدُ الطَّلَقَ, where he says, if the abd, if the slave of Allah then intended and want to go forward with الطلاق, فَفَعَلَهُ على الوجه الشرعي. So he does make the talaq according to the الوجه الشرعي, and talked about الوجه, meaning upon the right way, according to the deen, to the shara'. بأن أوقعه. What is the right way? أوقعه طلقة واحدة, that he makes one talaq only, not 3 times in one setting. This is not according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the believers. And it's one of the strange things that how can even people of knowledge would teach someone, when you make talaq, make it 3 times. Where is that in the book of Allah or in the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? This is playing with the ayat of Allah. And this is what Umar radiallahu anhu, when people start initiating this type of a thing, then he punished them by making it 3 talaq. And that's why the jumhur of the ulama, that whoever makes it 3, then it counts as 3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the believers that if they want to make talaq, we make 1 talaq. And there's iddah period. And after that, with of course the great wisdom behind this. So whoever does it, بأن أوقعه طلقة واحدة في غير حيض, without haid, without the wife being in haid in her menses, ولا طهر قد وطأ فيه, and without also being in the state of purity that they did not have relations in. So if this is done like this, and this is where they call it talaq sunnah, not the sunnah that is recommended, meaning the talaq, the proper talaq, that we get to know that by the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Whoever does it like this, and this is the last resort that they would have to divorce, فإنه لا يضيق عليه الأمر. The matter is not going to be tight for that person. And this ayah and other ayah, يتفرق يغني الله كل من سعته. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about those who divorce, if they do it in the right way after taking all the steps to avoid it, but at the end, if they depart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enrich them from His bounty subhanahu wa ta'ala, if they do it right. So even if that happens, which is not the best and the most recommended act, still if they do it in the right way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for them. بل جعل الله له فرجا وسعة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the person, al-faraj is the opening after tightness, the ease, and سعة, spaciousness. يتمكن بها من مراجعة النكاح إذا ندم على الطلاق. So if he makes it in the right way, he'll have a chance to return back to marriage if he regret the talaq, whether it's within the idda period or after the idda period, they can still go back together with a new contract, but it's still, there's a chance for them because it's the first or the second one. And he says, وإن كانت في سياق الطلاق والرجعة, and if it is in the context, a siyaq of divorce and returning back, so الرجعة is to take the wife back. فإن العبرة بعموم اللفظ لا بخصوص السبب. Even though the وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, it's mentioned in the context of الطلاق and الرجعة and taking the wife back, but العبرة, what matters in the tafsir always as a rule, he mentioned this قاعدة, this principle in the tafsir, that العبرة بعموم اللفظ. What counts is the general meaning of the word, not بخصوص السبب, not by the specific reason why the verse is revealed or the specific word here that is related to the talaq. That means وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, whoever fears Allah and is obedient to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways out for him. And then the next verse continues. This is in general for everyone in any case, not just in the talaq. So he says فَكُلُّ مَنِ اتَّقَ اللَّهَ ta'ala. So the umum, the general here, everyone that اتَّقَ Allah, apply the taqwa of Allah. وَلَازَمَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, and he was upon all the time مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, seeking the pleasure of Allah. في جميع أحواله, in all of his affairs, what happens? فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يُثِيبَهُ في الدُّنْيا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him in this dunya and in the hereafter. وَمِن جُمْلَةِ ثَوَابِهِ, and part of the thawab, from جُمْلَةِ الثَّوَاب, part that means the thawab are so many thawab, so many different rewards, whether we know or we do not know. But from this thawab, as mentioned in the ayah, أن يجعل له فرجا ومخرجا من كل شدة ومشقة, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make for that person farajan wa makhraja, an opening way out from every shiddah, from every difficulty, from every hardship. This is always the case for the people of the taqwa of Allah. Even in ways, من حيث لا يحتسب, as it's going to be mentioned, from where a person does not expect. So you think of all the possibilities that can be for the person to get out of the situation that he's in. If he has the fear of Allah and rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the world for him. And the ways that he does not expect can happen to him if he has the taqwa of Allah. He says, وَكَمَا أَنَّ مَنِ اتَّقَى اللَّهَ جَعَلَ لَهُ فَرَجًا وَمَخْرَجًا. Now he's talking about the mafhum of the ayah. So as we said, not every verse has a mantuq and mafhum. Mantuq is what actually the verses are saying. And al-mafhum is the understanding, which is, since the ayah says this, therefore the opposite is correct. This is not in every subject, in every verse. But here, there's a mafhum that you can benefit, or understanding that you can get benefit from it. And that is, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ, the one that does not have the taqwa of Allah, the one that does not have the fear of Allah, not obedient to Allah, وقع في الشدائد والآصار والأغلال التي لا يقدر على التخلص منها والخروج من تبعاتها. He would fall in the difficulties and the shackles of things that make him not able to do the right thing that he's not able to relieve himself or to remove it from himself. والخروج من تبعاتها. التبعات is the consequences of things. He's not able to get himself out of the difficult situations that he's in. And the most important thing in matters of deen, of course. Right? So he doesn't find, and this is, يعني, we have to be watchful what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees in our hearts. It's not by what physically you're doing. So even in the simple matter that you're seeking halal job, Allah knows best in your heart. Are you truthfully seeking halal job? Or there's limits for you? What if you stay for 2 months without the halal job? 5 years, 10 years, the rest of your life? Are you having a chance in your heart that you would take a haram job? Or it depends on the offer also. Allah knows what's in the hearts, even though physically the person does not do haram. But if he has the taqwa of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways the halal for him. But if he in his heart does not have the taqwa of Allah, and taqwa ha huna, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, at-taqwa ha huna. Taqwa is right here, and he pointed 3 times in his heart to his heart. So if he doesn't have it, he won't find ways out for him. He might find the best job, but this is not the way out. The way out is to apply the means of a taqwa of Allah, that he would get what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The opposite can be a punishment from Allah. So a person then, if he doesn't have the taqwa of Allah and he finds a great deal, and for that specific example, that he get the best job that everybody's going after, but it's shubha or it's haram. He thinks that this is by the mercy of Allah that he received this. And he doesn't know this miskeen person, that this is a punishment from Allah for him, because he doesn't have the taqwa of Allah. On the other hand, someone that has the taqwa of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways out for him, whether it's something that he was desiring or something that is he doesn't like. Low type of a thing, but it's purely halal. Allah made ways out for him. So the point here is the taqwa of Allah. This is what a person should focus on. By taking the means, the outcome and the results is not in one's hand. But this is a very important thing, which is مَن لَمْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ. This is the difficulties will be in his life, and he won't find ways out. And he says وَاعْتُبِرَ ذَلِكَ بِالطَّلَقِ. So this is in general, all matters. وَاعْتُبِرَ ذَلِكَ بِالطَّلَقِ. And to take a lesson from that, or to see that clearly with the subject of الطلاق. فإن العبد إذا لم يتق الله فيه. So applying this part of the verse, if the abd does not fear Allah, does not have the taqwa of Allah in the way that he makes talaq, and not just how to make talaq, but going about with whether to make talaq or not to make talaq, whether to be patient, whether not to be patient, all of these types of things. If he does not have the fear of Allah, and Allah knows what's in the hearts, بل أوقعه على وجه المحرم. He does it in the haram way also. كالثلاث ونحوه, like making it 3 times. Or the like of not applying the ahkam that we heard. فإنه لا بد أن يندم. So he has to regret. If he does not do it in the right way, he will have to regret ندامة لا يتمكن من استدراكها والخروج منها. He will regret in such a regret that he won't be able to fix it or come out of it. Why? Because he did not apply the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way that he conducted the talaq. And you would see that, subhanAllah, clearly, even when they decided and they agreed that they're going to make talaq, or the man decided that to make talaq, what comes after that? Is it according to the taqwa of Allah or not? And those who have the taqwa of Allah, they would do it even if it's against their own desires. So then, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, he would make ways out for the person. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ, the next ayah. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدَرًا. The verses of the Quran, each sentence is like a treasure, a life-changing matter. And he will provide him from sources he never could imagine. And whosoever puts his trust in Allah, then he will suffice him. Verily, Allah will accomplish his purpose. Indeed, Allah has set a measure for all things. Briefly, even though the sentences of the verse has great meanings and something that the heart needs to be established upon, وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. So more of the benefits of the taqwa of Allah. يَرْزُقْهُ, Allah will provide for him, مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ, from where he does not count. Al-Hisab is count. From where he does not recognize or or have any idea that this will be, or ever imagine that this will be the ways that Allah would provide for him. أي, what is the meaning? أي يسوق الله الرزق للمتقي. Allah يسوق. السوق is when something is dragged. Something is dragged. That means it's the rizq from Allah comes to the person, goes after the person, like death goes after him. So it's not that this is not even the choice of the abd. He might choose something else. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring, because He's a Razzaq subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَسُوقُ اللَّهُ الرِّزْقَ, the rizq, the provisions, to the muttaqi, to the one that is obedient to Allah. مِنْ وَجْهٍ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ, from wajh, again the wajh is mentioned here many times in the tafsir. Al-wajh is the face. But what did we say? What's a good word to apply it in a non-physical meaning? From the ways that has never been counted. When tawajjuh is when you face something, and this is what you're focused upon. So it comes from a way, comes your way, in such a way that you never ever expected that it's going to be from this place or this time or this individual and so on. وَلَا يَشْعُرُ بِهِ, and he does not even feel it that it's coming. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And what's mentioned in the Quran about this, in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, in the lives of people, and the more the person lives, the more that he would see in himself and others, without making the matter as a trial and error, because it requires from the heart this tawakkul ala Allah, the reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the taqwa of Allah is the most important thing that never is to be challenged with anything. وَارْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, whoever يتوكل على Allah, and yatawakkal is in the present tense. And what is the significance when the actions are mentioned in the present tense? That means it's تعني التجدد والاستمرار. In balagha, when something is mentioned in the present tense, that means it's always renewed and it's always continuous. Not he made tawakkul on Allah when he was 20 years old, and that incident, and then something else, he can weaken it. No, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, always. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ أي يتوكل على Allah in what? في أمر دينه ودنيا. In matters of his deen and matters of the dunya. بأن يعتمد على الله في جلب ما ينفعه ودفع ما يضر. That he rely upon Allah in bringing jalb, in bringing what's benefiting for him and pushing away what harms him. ويثق في تسهيل ذلك. And he's having the trust that this will make things easy for him. So this is at-tawakkul ala Allah, to rely with one's heart upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while taking the means in matters of deen, matters of dunya, and to have the full trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of all things, and He's the one that can make things for him, because He is Al-Khaliq, Al-Raziq, Al-Muhyi, Al-Mumit subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, you see that this is a conditional statement. The result is what? فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And this is a miraculous jawab, الشرط. When you have a conditional statement, what you call the second half of the sentence? The response to the condition. That is a miracle, the cause and effect. So the effect of it and the result of it is a miraculous thing, even in the way that the Quran would mention it. When you think, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, ever rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can think of many things that you can say afterwards. But the ayah says, فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Then indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is hasbuh. Hasbuh, that means the ha, and hasbuh refers to the individual. So hasbuh, that means I suffice for him. That's it. كَافِيهِ الْأَمْرِ. He would suffice for him the matter that he relied upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in. You leave it then. You leave the results. And that's if a person relies upon Allah and he take the physical means that in his capacity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will suffice for him. And this is, if we keep talking about it, whether it's in matters of dunya, it's obvious. In matters of deen, people think that if we don't do this, the others will take advantage of us. They already thinking of the results based on their actions. And where is the tawakkul ala Allah? In doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us, and not to go against the deen of Allah, thinking that these means that has sins in it will bring any benefit to the ummah. So, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ, in ways that you do not even expect. So don't leave even for yourself, any expectations of that, Allah would suffice for the person. وإذا كان الأمر في كفالة الغني القوي, so فهو حسبه. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the person will be في كفالة. الكفالة, الكفيل, the one that would take care of the person, he is the sponsor. So if the matter of the affairs of the believers is under the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sponsored by Allah, it's correct to say Al-Ghani Al-Qawi, the most rich, the all-powerful subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Aziz, the almighty, Al-Rahim, the most merciful. فهو أقرب إلى العبد من كل شيء. Therefore it's closer to the abd from every matter. ولكن, but ربما, maybe, أن الحكمة الإلهية, that the hikmah, the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, اقتضت, that would bring by necessity, because of the wisdom of Allah, it would make it delayed to the right time. اقتضت تأخيره إلى الوقت المناسب, to the perfect time, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Hakim. فلهذا قال تعالى, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إن الله بالغ أمره. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his amr would be reached, will be attained. Nobody would change anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed. لابد من نفوذ قضائه وقدره. The qadar of Allah has to be established. إن الله بالغ أمره. Nobody can do anything to oppose the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. Allah indeed made for every matter قدرا, its qadar, its time that has been decreed, وقتا ومقدرا لا يتعداه ولا يقصر عنه. No one would be able to exceed it, nobody would do it before it happens. So, and since the qadar is the secret of Allah, nobody knows it, and since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the believers to have the tawakkul upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that's also part of the qadar of Allah, that you do not know all means of ease in matters of deen and dunya. And therefore the last part of the ayah here is for the hearts of the believers to be in that state of tranquility, that nobody can change the qadar of Allah that Allah decreed for you. So you don't need to fear other than Allah. You don't need to commit sins to get your rights. All of these types of things, whether it's in At-Talaq, if I leave him, if I go by the Shara', wallahi, you would hear people sometimes say this clearly like this. If I apply the deen of Allah, that I won't get all my rights. This is, if it's not taking the person who might take into the state of kufr wal-'iyadu billah, what is it? Right? Sometimes it's mentioned even directly like this. That's why we have to, that's how they say, they have to go against the deen. Not just in the talaq and the marriage, sometimes it's in business. If I follow, a person would say, if he followed the commands of Allah, he would lose. This is how the market is. This is how the people are dealing with things. So that means if I'm the only one, that's how a person would say. If I'm the only one that would apply the rules of Allah, that means I'm going to lose on my business. This is a person doesn't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and attributes. And what if you lose your business, but you gained your religion? You gain the best of this life and hereafter, but it's not, again, he suggests that he has to have that business. And he wants to make a decision for himself that this is as if he knows the qadar of Allah. He wants to keep that business, that status, and it takes him from one stage to the other. He already decided for himself. So where is فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ? Allah suffice for him. If you fear Allah, leave the matter to Allah. What if he replaces it by something better for you? And that's for sure if a person fears Allah while taking, again, the means. So, إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدَرًا. And as also the al-qadr is the measurement of things, right? So قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدَرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for every matter. Shay is the smallest and the biggest thing. It's a measure that never to be exceeded, whether it's in the universal decree of Allah and also in the ahkam of Allah. When you apply the commands of Allah, there's a qadr to it. There's a measurement for it. That means don't exceed your limits, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his commands it in such a way that it's not left to one's desire. So it has to be according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed and commanded. And that's why the qadr, either al-shar'i or al-kawni. The shar'i, the religious ones, the believers, they apply it like al-kawni, like as if it's the qadar of Allah on everyone. This is the commands of Allah to be applied exactly the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered it. And the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the universal one, will occur no matter what people do. And that's why the um, part of that is that the ulama, they mentioned لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that no one will be burdened by something that is beyond one's capacity. So from the Shara perspective, قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. So there's limits and measures for every matter. And if he commanded you to do something, this is in your capacity. So follow the commands of Allah. Don't trust yourself. Rather put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but with ilm, with knowledge, so that the person does not go extreme also, thinking that this is in his capacity when it's not. So this is إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for everything a matter of or a measured everything is measured by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the precise precision commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stop here inshallah. And there's attendance code. Makhraja is the attendance code. MAKHRAJA. Makhraja, and ease from difficulty by applying the commands as mentioned. Someone shared this. He said, I read in Tafseer ibn Kathir, not long. I read in Tafseer ibn Kathir that a man said talaq 3 times during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, are they mocking the deen of Allah while I'm with them? That Allah's messenger was told about a man who pronounced 3 divorces on his wife at one time. So the Prophet ﷺ stood up while angry and said, أَيُلْعَبُ بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَأَنَا بَيْنَ أَظْهُرِكُمْ. The book of Allah is being made the subject of jest while I am still amongst you. A man then stood up and said, should I kill that man, O Messenger of Allah? The wife cannot be taken back after the 3rd divorce. This was applied at the time of Umar radiallahu anh, and Allah knows best. No. That he would punish them by applying it 3 times. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.